I'm here today because I've been invited by Kerrion and the committee. Thank you, honestly. And hopefully you'll all still be thankful at the end that they did this. I'm a priest. I'm married to a priest. I'm a daughter of a priest. To be honest, I've long been surrounded by dog collars and church. When I was growing up, I never ever thought it was strange. Surely everyone has the same experiences as I did. There was one time I remember where we were saving to go for me to go on a French trip in school. And Mum said, and my mum's here, Heather Van, so you can all look at her and laugh at her about this. She said to me, well, Helen, we can only afford to go if your father gets enough funerals. We can only afford if he gets enough funerals for you to be able to go. Well, of course, I thought that's normal. I told my friends in school. They said, you can on a French trip. I said, oh no, only if Dad gets enough funerals. They're absolutely horrified. They couldn't see that was a problem. I couldn't see it was a problem. They felt that was absolutely sick. I thought they really don't understand my background. So today, I want to think about the ways in which we try to rest and spend time with God. The life around us is complete and utter rush. Or to consider the times when we're so eager to do something for members of the congregation, for our spouses, for God, for our own families, that we're in such a rush that we just get really, oh, I can't do this. I got asked by my wife of a Pentecostal pastor once if God was working my husband too hard as well. And I thought that's actually a really lovely way of putting it, isn't it? Is God working your husband too hard as well? I think that sometimes we end up getting caught up in that rush and we need to find rest with God and to remember that our faith is just as important as the people that we're serving, the people around us in church. Chrissy's already beautifully read the passage, but I want to read it again, this passage about Mary and Martha. The passage is from Luke chapter 10, verses 38 to 42. And when I read the passage, I want you to think, am I Mary? Am I Martha? Would I be horrified with whichever one I'm not or I am? The passage says, now as they went on their way, he entered a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. She had a sister named Mary who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to what he was saying. But Martha was distracted by her many tasks. So she came to him and asked, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her then to help me. But the Lord answered her, Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things. There is need of only one thing. Mary has chosen the better part, which will not be taken away from her. Mary or Martha? Whenever I hear that reading, I always think of Bethany, where the family lived with their brother Lazarus, as the family who welcomed Jesus and who really loved him. You know, that place where you can go and just relax. You walk in, it's a friend's house, family house, you just relax. And I always think of it as that place for Jesus. It's the place where Jesus could go in, the business of the world around him stopped, and he got to feel at home. I'm hoping that this is what today will feel like for you. A chance to relax and spend time with God, a time to feel at home. Back to that passage. Jesus was visiting. Imagine the scene. Mary and Martha were there. Now, let's be honest, someone comes to visit, you make them a cup of tea or coffee. You make them a drink, have a seat. Actually, there's quite a number of houses here I've been in or people I've spent time with, and the first thing they've done is said, have a cuppa. So that is quite a normal thing. Mary and Martha, two sisters. Obviously very alike in many ways, but very unlike in others. I have two goddaughters who are sisters. When they were younger, they were so different. The one wasn't very cuddly, and was very, very boisterous. The other was very cuddly and quite timid compared to her sister. Being sisters, sometimes they get on well, and sometimes you can imagine. Their mum always used to say she couldn't understand it. She said, two people, same upbringing, same background, same parents, same house, but totally different. My goddaughters are a lot older now, and the timid one is far from timid. She's become a teenager, and she likes boys an awful lot. The two girls are still very different though. They're still different. When I was thinking about Mary and Martha, I had that same thought. Two sisters, same parents, same upbringing, but totally different. Martha was busying herself, making sure everything was ready for her guest. She would have been one of those go and get up and go type characters, or maybe a little fussy. If you've watched Keeping Up Appearances, do you remember the sitcom from a long time ago? She's your Hyacinth Bouquet, isn't she? Let's just get, for anyone who doesn't understand, there's this woman, her surname was spelled Bucket, but she decided she wanted to be known as Bouquet. She thought that was more sophisticated, and everything was always very correct. And she'd have a friend over for a cup of tea, her neighbour, and her neighbour would shake the china constantly because she was so nervous about getting anything wrong. I wonder whether Martha is a little bit like that. Very fussy, but really wants to get everything right. So it wasn't in a bad way, but wanted everything to be right. Mary, who was enjoying her guest's company so much, she didn't set out. She didn't help out. She just sat there. She could be seen as the quieter character who just wants to listen, or perhaps the person who wants to learn. We are all different. We all have different ways of approaching things. In the reading, you may have had a sympathy with Martha rushing around. That's what you should do. And understanding Mary not wanting to lose that moment. Martha had distractions. She was so distracted by everything else going on in the moment that she didn't stop to think about what else might be needed. We can all do this. We can spend so much time busying ourselves that we forget to take time out to sit in peace and listen to God. There's a story of a man who lost his watch in a house whilst working. He searched everywhere for it, and so did all the other people who were working with him, but they couldn't find it. So everyone, apart from one boy, went outside to look. When the boy declared he'd found the watch inside. He was asked how he'd found it. He replied, "I sat down when you'd all gone, and I listened, and then I could hear the watch ticking." Mary sat down and listened to Jesus. She wasn't distracted. And we need to make sure that we sit and listen to God, that we give him our whole selves and listen to what he wants to say to us. Finding time and space for that is not easy. Life rushes around us. We're all under so many different pressures. We've heard about some of them with lockdown and children. Frankly, I know Kerrian's children, they're perfect because they're not mine anyway, and I didn't have to deal with them, but I'm not bad, but they're absolutely perfect. But it's hard work. I understand that lots of people have pressures, the stress, the church, people in the church. We want to get back to church. We want to get back in the building. Why can't we sing? Let us sing. I know lots of clergy have had people moan about that. That actually came up in the discussion yesterday. The Archbishop said that lots of clergy have been finding that one of the biggest pressures. People say, why can't we sing? We should be allowed to sing. We should be allowed to play the organ. We're back in church. It should be the same as it always has been. And people forget sometimes that we're in a pandemic because everyone's fraught. The people in the church are fraught. We're fraught. There's always pressures. When you're pressured like that, sometimes you can think, oh, just go away, leave me alone. I need my space. Please stop. I'm still me. I'm not just this person you built me into. I'm still me. Give me a chance to breathe. I heard about a rather lovely story about Jane Williams, wife of former Archbishop of Canterbury, Rowan Williams, his enthronement as Archbishop of Canterbury. Afterwards, not being able to stop because she was rushing around looking for her son. Her son had gone missing amongst the crowd. She found him. That's our reality. That's real life. Life is a rush, but do we take time out to be us with God? Mary and Martha, two sisters, same upbringing, totally different people. All of us, children of God, related in the family of God, but totally different people. Our unity will come in lots of similar experiences, I'm sure. And we'll be looking at that afterwards as well. But the most important thing is that we need to find that time to listen to God, to rest, to say to the rush, go away, I need to rest, this is my time. I remember once when I was training, offering to meet someone else who's training me and saying, should we pray together? And he said, no. And I said, why? He said, because I don't double date God, which I thought was the weirdest thing. But actually, there is something lovely about that. For me and God, it's my time, no one else's. I need that space, I need that rest. No one else can impinge on that. One of the things I've become very aware of in St Padarns is that when you're worshipping, quite often the students watch you worship to try and work out what kind of a Christian you are or what you like. That can be really awkward. But how many people in church are watching us and how we worship and how we pray? And it can feel that way sometimes, can't it? And people can kind of copy you, or they box you and decide who you are. This is between you and God. This is your time with God, no one else's. You don't have to double date God either. I want us to just think about today our unity in seeking to listen to God, to do things for him, and to be open to him. We're going to break out now into groups. I know that Rachel's going to put us all into groups, but I've got some questions to think about and discuss. I think it's about 10 minutes in group time, isn't it? And here they are. Oh, brilliant. So the first question, if Jesus called around to your house, would you rush to get things perfect, or would you sit and wait? Do you find it difficult to stop life in the vicarage or in St Padarns and rest? In your relationship with God, do you try and cover things over to make yourself seem perfect, or are you honest and open before him? Okay, could we go into groups now and have our chat? You don't need to panic if you're not used to this, going to groups, just say yes to anything, agree, and you'll be fine. It's quite about what identifies you. What identifies you? Who are you? I've often wondered what people see first when they see me. I may not want to know, but we all have our public face. We all have our real face as well. That's not some strange psychological thought analysis. It's just a thought. We have our public face and we have maybe what is our real face. I watched a programme a while ago about Hillary Clinton. In the programme, she was asked about how she had dealt with her husband Bill Clinton's affair. She said that she was really cross with him, but she wouldn't leave him because she didn't want to disturb the country. And there's one crucial moment where they were both getting on a plane and their daughter Chelsea was with them. And Chelsea went and held hands with her mum and with her dad. So they walked united as a family. And Chelsea, this young girl that she was then, had just decided to do that. So they looked like a united family. She just kind of knew what to do to make that work. We all have a public face. We all have our vicarage smiles. We all have our clergy wives smiles. But we also have our real lives. A number of years ago, my husband Ian and I went on a coach tour. Ian showed me, he said this will be really interesting. It was called it Dam Busters and the Great Escape. And I thought, okay. I said, there's a lot to do. It looks absolutely exhausting. And he said, no, think about the age profile. We'll be the youngest there. The people who'll be there will be much older. They're bound to be retired. We were the youngest, but the man leading it was former RAF. And he was like, come on, we're going to have a bimble. Get up, we're starting at 7:30. Like, oh, not again. But anyway, I don't know about you, but whenever we go on holiday, we never, ever say what we do. Never. Because the moment you tell someone what you do is the moment they'll say something like, oh, yes, now, my sister's got a friend who's got a dog walker who goes to church somewhere in Wales. Do you know them? Or they tell you the rudest jokes they can to try and shock you. Because, of course, we've never heard anything rude. So on the tour, we kept ourselves to ourselves, not telling anyone anything. And there was a little memorial done at the prison camp in Sargon from which the Great Escape had happened. And this really beautiful poem was read out that someone had written after the Vietnam War. And I said to Ian, that'd be amazing for Remembrance Sunday. And Ian said, it really would. He said, but how do we get a copy? So I said, right, I'll speak to Trevor, who's the tour leader, and explain to him why we're keeping ourselves to ourselves. So he told me, he said, that's fine. We've got a husband and son here, a father and son here, who are doctors. We're not telling anyone. We'll keep it completely to ourselves. I'll keep it to myself, but here's the poem. It was brilliant. A little bit later in the tour, we were on a tram in Dresden when someone from the tour said to me, he was wearing a rugby shirt and he was getting a ticket, and she said, did your husband play rugby? And I said, yes, he did. Not thinking anything of it. You know, grew up in South Wales, you play rugby, it's fine. At the end of the holiday, it turned out that had started a conversation amongst all the people that we hadn't spoken to, who decided that the reason we were so private was because Ian was an ex-international rugby player. And to be honest, that was rather more fun than the reality. I did comment, where's the money? And he said, well, I played, I would have been an amateur. So I wouldn't have had a professional. We have a double life, all of us. We almost do. We're always ourselves. But can I just say, being mistaken for the wife of an ex-rugby international is rather more fun than anything else. There is something fun about that. Who are you, really? Are you a wife? A mum? An ex-international rugby player? Or married to one? Are you a child of God, loved for who you are? If you had the opportunity to sit and think it through, would you prefer rest or rush? Not what will you end up with, not what you think, what would you prefer? There's no shame whichever you choose, it's you. This is you as you before God. Are you rushing Martha or resting Mary, somewhere between the two? Where do you find God? Do you find God in a rush? If you do, you need to find a way to make space for that to happen. If you find God in rest, you need to find a way to make space for that to happen. I absolutely hate it when people tell me, look, just rest and chill. That's always what's best for me. It's what I need. I heard a story about Zoe Ball, And when she was married to Norman, I can't remember his name, Fat Boy Slim, for anyone who remembers that whole 90s period. And she wrote a thing and said that she'd got a little cupboard that she went and she put an exercise bike in. And when he was getting fed up of her, he said, just go in your cupboard, will you? Which sounds awful. He'd say, Zoe, where's your head at? Just go on the bike. So she'd go in the cupboard, go on the bike, and it helped. Sadly, their marriage fell apart, so it's not the best example. However, it was the knowledge of that's what she needed. We all know what we need. You know who you are. You know what you need. It's about acknowledging before God that regardless of everything else that is going on, you still need time with him. I'm sure you all get bombarded with various things on the internet, various stories, some funny, some not. But there's one, you may well have heard it, but I just want to share it because it's a really lovely story. I think it's really helpful for us today. A little boy wanted to meet God. He knew it was a long trip to where God lived, so he packed his suitcase with biscuits and 6 cans of lemonade, and he started his journey. When he'd walked for a short while, he met an old woman. She was sitting in the park, just staring at some pigeons. The boy sat down next to her and opened his suitcase. He was about to take a drink from his lemonade when he noticed that the old lady looked hungry, so he offered her a biscuit. She gratefully accepted it and smiled at him. Her smile was so pretty that the boy wanted to see it again, so he offered her a lemonade. Again, she smiled at him. The boy was delighted. They sat there all afternoon, eating and smiling, but they never said a word. As it grew dark, the boy realised how tired he was. And he got up to leave, but before he'd gone more than a few steps, he turned around, ran back to the old woman and gave her a hug. She gave him her biggest smile ever. When the boy opened the door to his own house a short while later, his mother was surprised by the sheer look of joy on his face. She asked him, "What did you do today that made you so happy?" He replied, "I had lunch with God." But before his mother could respond, he added, "You know what? She's got the most beautiful smile I've ever seen." Meanwhile, the old woman, also radiant with joy, returned to her home. Her son was stunned by the look of peace on her face, and he asked, "Mum, what did you do today that made you so happy?" She replied, "I ate biscuits in the park with God." However, before her son responded, she added, "You know, he's much younger than I expected." Too often we underestimate the power of a touch, a smile, a kind word, a listening ear, an honest compliment, or the smallest act of caring, all of which have the potential to turn a life around. If we can do this, just imagine what it would be like to sit with Jesus. No one else around, just you and him. What would you say? Who would you be? In quietness and rest, we can find our way to God. It may be in rushing and lots of noise. We need to turn on the off switch of parish life for a moment. Be who we truly are. Before I give you some more questions, I just wanted to take a moment to be Mary and to rest. So let us pray. Loving Lord, drop thy still dews of quietness till all thy striving cease. Take from our souls the strain and stress, and let our ordered lives confess the beauty of your peace. Loving Lord, we come into your presence and we thank you that we shall be received with love. May we always know your peace, Lord. Thank you that you love and accept us for who we are. Thank you that you know us and can see past all the false smiles or all the false friendships. Thank you that you love us just as we are. Most of all, thank you that we can be received with love. Amen. God loves you just as you are. There is nothing you can do to make God love you more, and there's nothing you can do to make God love you less. It's you and God, and he loves you. My questions now are, how easy is it to be truly you? Do you get cross with a parish or diocese for eating into family time? How can you find space to be both you and you as a couple and as a family? I'm just going to throw my own 2 bits in here. I'd just turned 22 in the July. Ian and I got married in the August. And on marriage, I gained a 14-year-old stepdaughter, which means at the age of 27, I had my first grandchild, which is just too wonderful. So Jessica is married to Gary. They live in Barry. It's just too beautiful, Gary from Barry. It's just too perfect. It sounds like St Gavin and Stacey. And we have 3 grandchildren. Jack is 15, Ryan's 11, and Katie's 6. And Katie rules everything, of course, because women always do, don't they? So there was a little bit of concern at one stage when Katie decided that she was married to Mo Salah, the Liverpool football player. And then she informed me that I had to have a boyfriend. So I explained to her, so, well, Katie, that's not how it works. She said, no, you've got to have a boyfriend. I said, well, no, I've got Grandad. He's my husband. I don't need a boyfriend. Yes, but you can have a boyfriend as well. You must have a boyfriend, Nanny. I said, oh, must I? She said, yes. She said, I'm going to find you a boyfriend. So I thought, okay. She said, you're going out with Jurgen Klopp. And I said, well, that's all right. That's fine. He's the manager of Liverpool. That's okay. So, yeah. According to Katie, I went out with Jurgen Klopp as well as whilst being married to her grandfather. As only a 6-year-old can truly believe. But it's rather lovely because it actually, I was saying earlier in the group, that it makes me very fiercely protective of family time. And I remember when Ian was a curate and we were in Barry and they were doing an Alpha course, and one woman said to me, oh, Helen, you're going to come to Alpha? And I said, no. I said, no, I'm with Jessica. She said, well, I've got children too. She said, I'm still coming to Alpha. I said, your husband Mark's with the children, yeah? And she went, yes. I said, well, my husband's at Alpha with all of you. And she said, oh no, you must come to Alpha. And as if I was a bad Christian because I wasn't going to Alpha. And I said, no, God's given me Jessica. I'm looking after Jessica. She comes first. So I think that's something that we all find, isn't it? Protecting that time. You know, our family, our children, our husbands, they're all God's gift to us. And we protect that time. This isn't your time. This is our time, which is nice. And I always remember growing up as a vicar's daughter. And I'm sorry for all of you because have we got other people who are clergy children? Yes, Christy, I know Christy is, yes. And Roz. And one of the things is you go through lots of different things. I remember I'd be walking around in Clanrumney where I grew up and I'd hear, oh, it's Vicar Barnes' daughter by there. And you'd be like, oh, yes, that's who I am. But one of the things I always remember was that no matter how busy parish life was, holidays were my time. Holiday was totally me and Dad, no one else, just me and Dad. Mum was there too, she was quite important as well, you know, to be there. She'll be pleased to know. But it was my time with my dad. You know, he did silly things and he relaxed.
Cooked the meal.
Pardon?
I said, Mum cooked the meals, did she?
Yes, she did. And she gave appropriate cutches. I put up with my nonsense and playing silly games and things and very patient. But yeah, but no, that was my time with Dad. I think that's really important, actually, the children to have time with you as well, and with your husbands as well. It's really good. I also knew holiday that's my time. There's no one else around, no one to church. Dad's Dad now. He's not someone's vicar, he's Dad. I don't know, Mum, when he got a chance to be your husband, but but that was my dad time. So when I was 19, it was a very long time ago. I'm 42. Yeah, I've got grandchildren, the wrinkles. Anyway, I was at a conference for young Anglicans. It was an international conference. I was representing my diocese, which was Monmouth at the time. I was very excited. I didn't know where we were going to be heading. It's an international conference. And I found out the host country was Wales. The first I travelled was to Lincoln in England. There's people coming from the States and Australia, and I'm just from Cardiff. Anyway, I met a lot of other PKs, as they call them, pastors' kids, when I was there. And it's rather fun talking to people and seeing how different life was, being a child of the vicarage in different countries. And this one woman I met, one girl I met, was telling me all about her mother, was the first female bishop in Canada. And she was telling me all about what happened there. And I thought, I haven't had that experience. Then there was this man called Calvin who spoke and gave a testimony. His dad was a bishop, and they, during civil war in Liberia, his dad and other members of the church were just kind of pushed out, and they had to live in the jungle eating leaves. Now, I stupidly felt sorry for him. I felt sorry for this guy, Calvin. He'd been through a lot. His dad had died. But it was fine, because Calvin decided that was the opportunity, after I said, hello, it's nice to meet you, to say, I believe God's telling me that you and I will be together and we'll get married. I said, thank you, that's nice. He said, so will you marry me? I said, God might be telling you that right now, but he hasn't revealed it to me yet. So no, I don't think we will get married. Somebody suggested that I should have got married because Dad may have got a camel as a dowry. But anyway, I also had a proposal from some of the Bahamas, which I turned down as well. Ian's so lucky. I could have lived in Liberia or the Bahamas, and I'm here in Swansea. It's much better. But actually, on that conference, there's this one guy who was quite wild. Wild in my eyes. He smoked a lot, he drank a lot, he swore a lot, and he wore unusual clothes. He was from Portugal. He was the son of a bishop, and I was horrified. What right did I have to be horrified about this? I was brought up to be me, and not just the vicar's daughter. So I assumed, I didn't have to behave in a certain way, but he did. His dad's a bishop. I, who should have known better, was really surprised. Have you noticed that if anyone does anything slightly wrong in a clergy household, the first bit that's reported is vicar's child, vicar's wife, vicar's husband? That's the first bit you get. It all has that feeling that we have to be absolutely perfect. And sometimes I kind of want to bulk against that a bit. There was one occasion, we went to a parish in Nye where the previous incumbent had been imprisoned for 27 years worth of child abuse offences to members of the congregation. It's a bit of a scary time. We got invited to the summer fair before we started. We went along, and when you feel as if everyone's watching you? It literally felt as if everybody was watching us. And someone said to me, you two are more popular than Posh and Bex. Everyone wants to see what you look like. So straight away you're thinking, okay, so there's not enough going on here. So this man came up to me, and I can tell you the man's name because he's not alive anymore, so that's okay. And he said, hi, the name's Ryan, Ted Ryan. And I want to say, 007. I said, hello. He said, I heard the new vicar had a wife. You must be her. And just for a flash moment, I felt like saying, no, I'm not. I'm his bit on the side. His vicar's a real cow. She's horrible. You don't want to meet her. And I was desperate to say that. Right, so I said, yes, of course I am, yeah. But sometimes you get so much to be the centre of all things. You just feel like saying, stop it. No, I'm just going to say something outrageous. I haven't yet, but I come really close. But actually, in life in parish, in life in general, we often get things wrong. And we do. We're humans. We're not God. I've often said to people, you know, you're not actually God, you're just called to work for him. You're not actually God. So you will make mistakes. That's okay. I want to think about probably one of my favourite passages from the Gospels. I love Mary and Martha, and this is second. This isn't like my, greatest hits or one of those things, my favourites. The programme, can't think of it, on Radio 4, where they used to do records and stuff, and you talk your life with records. Yes?
Desert Island Discs.
Yeah, this is my biblical version of Desert Island Discs. But in this passage, it's all about Peter. Peter, the most human of all the disciples, the one who just always seems to get things wrong, the one we can all identify with, I think, at times. Well, I certainly can anyway. I shouldn't judge for you. But in the passage I want to read, it's Jesus' appearance to disciples after the resurrection. Peter had denied Jesus, died knowing him at the crucifixion, and now Peter and the other disciples are seeing Jesus again. This passage is a time of healing for Peter, and it all happens over food, which is always useful. So John chapter 21, verses 1 to 17. After these things, Jesus showed himself again to the disciples by the Sea of Tiberias. And he showed himself in this way. Gathered there together were Simon Peter, Thomas called the twin, Nathanael of Cana of Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and two others of his disciples. Simon Peter said to them, I'm going fishing. They said to him, we'll go with you. They went out and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. Just after daybreak, Jesus stood on the beach. The disciples did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to them, Children, you have no fish, have you? They answered him, No. He said to them, Cast the net to the right side of the boat, and you'll find some. So they cast it, and now they were not able to haul it in because there were so many fish. That disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, It's the Lord. When Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on some clothes, for he was naked, and jumped into the lake. But the other disciples came in the boat, dragging the net full of fish, for they were not far from the land, only about 100 yards off. When they had gone ashore, they saw a charcoal fire there, with fish on it and bread. Jesus said to them, Bring some of the fish that you've just caught. So Simon Peter went aboard and hauled the net ashore, full of large fish, 153 of them. And although there were so many, the net was not torn. Jesus said to them, Come and have breakfast. Now none of the disciples dared to ask him, Who are you? Because they knew it was the Lord. Jesus came and took the bread and gave it to them, and did the same with the fish. This was now the third time that Jesus appeared to the disciples after he was raised from the dead. When they'd finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? He said to him, Yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Jesus said to him, Feed my lambs. A second time he said to him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? He said to him, Yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Jesus said to him, Tend my sheep. He said to him the third time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter felt hurt because he said to him the third time, Do you love me? And he said to him, Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you. Jesus said to him, Feed my sheep. In that passage, we hear the disciples seeing Jesus after his resurrection. There must have been some amazement, to say the least. They hadn't all seen him. They'd followed Jesus, they'd seen him crucified, and they'd heard that he was alive. Peter denied even knowing Jesus at his arrest. And now Jesus was confronting him, but with words of comfort. Peter must have felt lots of different emotions, But Jesus reached out to him and said those really lovely, simple words, "Let's have breakfast." Absolutely amazing. I often wonder what I would say if Jesus invited me to have breakfast with him. How would you feel if Jesus invited you to have breakfast with him? If in the same way he looked at the disciples and said, "Come and have breakfast with me," he looked at you and asked the same. I wonder what it would be like to sit and have breakfast with Jesus. How would we react? What would we say? What would we expect? At breakfast, Jesus offered Peter forgiveness. Jesus asked Peter 3 times if he loved him, which mirrors the 3 times that Peter denied Jesus. By asking Peter if he loved him, Jesus reminding Peter that with him, the slate is wiped clean and we can all start again. Guess what? You don't need to impress anyone. You don't need to live your life in a way that everyone else thinks you should. We all have moments when we just like to scream and tell everyone to get lost, "I've had enough." We wouldn't, but we'd like to. Have you seen the programme, The Rev? Has anyone seen that programme? Yeah, there's some smiles, yes. There's a brilliant bit where the vicar, Adam, sadly has lost his faith a bit. He's really struggling with ministry. And he's sitting around in his dressing gown, not having washed for a couple of days, when the lady who does the flowers comes to the vicarage. She's absolutely shocked by his appearance. She usually worships him because he's so perfect. She loves the vicar. She's absolutely shocked by his appearance. And she said, "Adam, are you okay?" He's like, "Yes, I'm okay." And I said, "Brad, let me talk to you about the flowers." So she goes on for a little while about the flowers. And he goes, "Look, I don't care about the flowers. Do whatever you want. I'm just not interested. Go away." Exactly the thing we'd never say. And we'd immediately tet at that and think, "Oh, I can't believe they do that. That's awful. That's not responsibility and care to members of the church." Or maybe we'd think, "Actually, I'd quite like to be that brave and honest sometimes." This is why we need a chance to rest. Because as soon as we get to a stressful situation, we can lose ourselves and be someone we're not, saying the wrong thing, getting into trouble, getting ourselves in a mess. We can have pressures on us and we can be so concerned to protect everybody else around us and their faith. How can I help their faith? I'm going to rush to support you in your faith. I'm going to help you. I'm going to run some Bible studies for you because that'll help you. I'm going to do some more prayers for you because that'll help you. Oh, I haven't had a chance to read the Bible and pray myself for a few days, but I've helped so-and-so. They found a really great passage in the Gospels that has just changed and revolutionised their relationship with God. But I haven't had time to think about my relationship with God. We deserve time out with God of our own. No double dating. Having discovered and thought about whether we meet God in rest or rush, we have to find a way to do that for ourselves. And I know it's so much easier said than done. Do we neglect ourselves by rushing around for others? For the parish? For the ministry area? For the college? So much that we don't get our own space. And we also have this certain code that people within ministry understand. We get that there's some things you do, some things you wouldn't do. For example, when does Christmas happen in your house? Christmas happens on Boxing Day. That's when you get a chance to collapse. You can really have a lie in, you can rest, relax. That's when it happens. You've had church, you've done all the wonderful praising God, but just that kind of like, oh, it happens on Boxing Day. That's when Christmas happens. Or Holy Week. don't book anything in Holy Week because you'll not have a chance to do a thing. If you get Easter eggs, buy them well in advance of Holy Week, because Holy Week you'll just be too exhausted. I remember when Jessica was pregnant with Katie, and they gave the date that Katie was due, and they changed the date to Good Friday. Jessica's face just dropped as she told us, because she knew that'd be the worst possible week for Katie to be born would be in Holy Week. But it's that understanding that we have within clergy households. If there's a funeral or a pastoral visit, we accept that has to come first, and we accept that. Because that's the way we do things. That's how things work in clergy lives. That's how things work in our households. But actually, within that, it becomes even more important to find a way to stop rushing for everybody else. To do a Mary, to stop, to rest, don't feel guilty. My final questions are, and we've touched on these in lots of other ways through this, so apologies about that as well, but are you a rusher or a rester? And do you have time to be either of those things? Do you feel pressurised to be someone you're not, and do you have a mechanism for being you?